The film Dakota 38 was screened as part of the Forgiveness 360 Symposium that was held at Concordia University in St. Paul. As part of that film screening, we were honored to have Jim Bear Jacobs come in and give us commentary on the film.
Jim had this vision of somehow healing these wounds, because to do nothing heals nothing.
Jim Bear has a close working relationship with Jim Miller, who is the visionary and subject of the film Dakota 38. Jim Bear is authorized to speak on Jim Miller's behalf. Jim Bear Jacobs is a member of the Turtle Clan of the Mohican tribe. He is also a minister with the Assemblies of God. I think you'll be inspired by the insight that he brings to bear.
Dakota 38, Forgiveness and Understanding, is a Minnesota Partnership co-production of Spirit in the House, a nonprofit that produces performing arts events with spiritual meaning, and Twin Cities Public Television. Additional funding has been provided by Augsburg College of Minneapolis, Concordia University of St. Paul, Theater for the Thirsty, and Zell Hoffman Vobel and Mason, LLP.
There is absolutely no reason why we should forgive. These things are unforgivable. But on the other hand, carrying that unforgiveness is destroying our community. And crafting this idea, what does it mean to forgive? Well, it never means forgetting. If you go right now to spots in the prairie, in Nebraska, in South Dakota, even into Wyoming and Montana, you can still find spots where you can see the ruts of covered wagons, the wheel ruts of covered wagons in the earth. Now the land there is beautiful. The land has moved on, but the land is not forgotten. The scar's still there from 170 years ago. And so I say, if the land itself can't forget, then the people, American Indians, who are created from this land, literally pulled from this soil, we can't forget either. In the West, as Americans, we kind of hold on to this proverb that time heals all wounds. And so when we speak of white and American Indian relations, we think of 150 years ago as a long time ago, and 150 years has passed, so that's 150 years removal from these stories, and it should be 150 years of being somewhere better off. I have a good friend of mine named Bob, whose great-grandmother was held at the concentration camp below Fort Snelling, and he knew his great-grandmother, so he got those first-hand account of those stories. And so it's not that long ago. But also, stories don't exist in time as they do in kind of a Western mindset. So 1862 is irrelevant. The stories exist in space. And so as long as we walk in this space, on this earth, those stories are present with us. They're a present reality. And therefore the wounds can stay fresh, which is a negative. But also the tie to the ancestors are so alive, which is the positive. If we were to take a poll of the room, and I were to say, tell me a story of your great-great-grandfather or grandmother, perhaps one or two in the room might have a story that was passed down to them. But I would venture to guess that that would be a rarity in this room. And if you go into an American Indian setting and say, tell me a story of your great-great-grandfather, chances are pretty good that they'll have one. And they'll have stories of his father and his grandfather and going back. It's so when the stories occupy space, they're always present, and the ancestors are always near. I bring people down to the concentration camp site below the fort. I've brought Dakota descendants down there who aren't privy to their own story. Just entering that space, they hear things and they experience things that they have no knowledge of hearing or experiencing. Because you call it genetic memory or just call it the story existing in space. When you have a recognition that you're stepping into the sacred, your ears turn a certain direction and your heart opens a certain way. The concentration camp site now is a state park. You can cross-country ski through it, you can jog through it, ride a bike, all of this. You can do all of these recreational things and have no experience of this. But when someone brings you down and says, we're entering into a sacred space, suddenly you start listening with different ears and your eyes open a different way. And you become more sensitive to the stories that exist around you. One gentleman who's a Dakota descendant and wasn't incredibly connected to the story of 1862 came up to me and he said, I heard a song while I was down there. And he sang the song in Dakota. Another gentleman came up to me and he says, I never have visions, but as I sat here, I saw these trees here weeping the drops of blood. And I didn't understand what this was until I just sat there and realized that these trees are nourished by the 300 ancestors who didn't make it out of the camp that winter. If you listen to why these men and women are on this ride, you'll hear things. I'm riding for my people. I'm riding for a healing that needs to take place for our people. And so it is a 330-mile ceremony of forgiveness. When you have a background understanding of native spirituality, there's beautiful imagery in that for 330 miles they're riding east. Because in the sacredness of the directions, east is the direction of restoration and renewal. The new day is restored every morning with the daybreak star rising in the east. And so they're riding towards restoration, they're riding towards renewal, they're riding towards healing. To be expelled west, west is the direction of turmoil and hardship. It's where the thunder beings live. It's where the rains and the storms of life generate from. So 150 years ago, with the expulsion west, is a terrible thing, but a 330-mile ceremony east towards renewal and restoration. It's a beautiful ceremony.
There's two things I want to bring up from the white culture just to support some of the insights here. One of them is from William Faulkner. He said the past isn't over, it isn't even past. So the sense that the past continues to live with us is an Indian idea, but it's also a powerful idea from our own literature. And also there's a Jewish concept that the soul only grows in contact with another soul. So it's in community with other human beings that you become human. It's in community with other souls that you develop your soul.
Dakota 38, Forgiveness and Understanding, is a Minnesota Partnership co-production of Spirit in the House, a nonprofit that produces performing arts events with spiritual meaning, and Twin Cities Public Television. Additional funding has been provided by Augsburg College of Minneapolis, Concordia University of St. Paul, Theater for the Thirsty, and Zell Hoffman Vobel and Mason, LLP.